Well, hello again, everybody. Welcome to Aquarius Rising Australia. It's Monday morning. And of course, as always, Morne is here and Gabbi. And today, so happy and excited to have Rachel Vaughan with us again. Welcome, 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 beautiful ladies. How are you today?
Good, good. Good to be back.
Yeah,
great
it's
company.
Lovely to see you again. It was so nice to have you both on our show with Dr. Zandre Buerta the other day as well.
Well, that was amazing.
Yeah. I want to encourage our viewers. In fact, maybe Morne, if we can maybe even put the link, because that particular recording is not on YouTube. It's on Odyssey. Zandre Buerta is South Africa's blood doctor and has done a lot of these slides. So before and after but it was amazing because we had a round table, I think of 10 or 12 people with us, just everyone sharing. And it was just an incredible time of just connecting with everyone. So please go and watch it. It's really amazing to see what's happening. I know there's a lot of people that have come out with similar stuff to what she's come out. I've got to learn how to not say certain words. I'm battling to, when we say stuff, we know what we're talking about, right? Okay. Well, I'm so happy again, Rachel, to have you. And again, I think what we wanted to talk about today was also just your journey through your horrible experience, and maybe if there's anything you can highlight for us, and just as we go along the way. So over to you two beautifuls.
I think it must be just such an incredible time. I know we were chatting briefly last night, Rachel. I'm just overwhelmed with emotion at times, seeing these signs, turning up at rallies and having your name, having Jeanette Archer, having Fiona Barnett, and all these new names, all these new people coming forward as well. And it's kind of like, wow. So I can only imagine how it must be for you to see the public rising up and, number one, stopping and listening to survivors, but actually supporting you. And, they're putting their bodies out there and raising their voices. Like, just wow. Like, how is that experience for you at the moment?
Very emotional, very emotional. So people keep sending me things, and even, just looking at, because I don't watch the mainstream news because I just get too furious, but I was seeing all the Canberra protests come up on my YouTube feed, and so I checked them out. And on one particular one, which is the Channel 9 broadcast, it's only about 3.5 minutes long, two of my friends are there, and both their posters came up with their placards, and it was just amazing, full circle for me, because I was abused at what I believe was Channel 9 studios as a child. I was raped twice on one occasion as a small child, and filmed for one of those. And it was actually very, very disturbing, because I really loved the Humphrey Bear show, which is a show here where a person dresses up as a big bear. And I was actually raped by a man in a Humphrey suit at what I believe to be Channel 9 studios. And I've described what the layout was and what was in the big shed, and people have told me that have used to work there, yeah, that's so-and-so site. And then to have, now, after all these disclosures that I've made and working so hard over the last 15 years to get this information out, now I've got my face on a placard in Channel 9 news broadcast, and another sign with my name up in lights, and it's just amazing. And it's beautiful too, because I didn't know this young man that was carrying this particularly large placard around until just recently. And his name's Scott. He's just gorgeous. He's been everywhere. He's taken photos of the placard right in front of Parliament House. He's been on 7 News, ABC News. He's been on ABC as well, Gabbi. 9, carrying this wonderful placard around so many of the protests. He was on Real Rukshan, who's a alternative media dude here, with his sign, and the sign just keeps getting better and better. So it's evolved. So it was just a few names originally, and now these are all the amazing survivors he's got on this placard. So on one side, he's got myself, Jeanette Archer, Fiona Barnett, my brother Andrew McIntyre, who's also a whistleblower, Stephen Masters, who you obviously know, Tim Roy, Dean Henry, Lisa Gillard, Nellie Street, Annika Lucas, Samantha Brown, and Richard Kerr. And on the reverse side, our beautiful Gabbi, Dale Holmes, Wilfred Wong, Franca Arena, Bill Heffernan, who's an MP here, who's just amazing, Desmond Davey, who I love, and Kerry Saint. So so some of those obviously aren't just survivors, are advocates as well. It's just beautiful.
Thank you, Scott. You're amazing. He's such a trooper. Like, he's just out with his signs so much.
And everyone that meets him, everyone that meets him says he's just the most lovely young man. He's a real sweetheart. So to when I first started speaking out, I was very much on my own. I did have two siblings who were also speaking out, but we lost most of the family because we dared to speak out. And it is a cult family, and a lot of the people in cult families get their credentials, get their station in life because they're quiet about their abuse, and they get mentored into positions. So I've spoken before about how I was mentored into, or basically I was just gifted entry to a Bachelor of Science degree when I had no ability to actually get into it. And that's at Flinders University here. And I've got my transcripts to prove I didn't have the marks in year 12 to get into that. My father rang me to ask me if I had got in. I tried to get into a Bachelor of Arts and a Bachelor of Science. To get into a Bachelor of Science was a much harder thing at that point. This is in the early 90s. And he made a phone call. Shortly after that, I was offered a position. So that's all he had to do for me to get in. And I've got my transcript to prove it. So just unbelievable. Wow. And they wanted me, basically, my father and this other family member wanted me to be a psychologist. And that's what happens in these families. You get put into position. So luckily I flunked out. I didn't want to be part of it. I knew that there was something wrong there because they kept telling me I didn't have to even put pen to paper. I would still get my degree at the end of it, even if I couldn't get through the exams. I would pass. That was the
how scary is that? Wow.
How many people have got their degrees that way?
I was about to say, how incredibly ridiculous is that? Because I mean, if we understand how large and powerful this cult is, with these whole Masons all intertwined with each other, because that's really what it is, right? The Masons, because they really do have their special little handshake that ensures they've got each other's back. So I want my daughter to be in there. Okay, cool. One phone call, there she is. And you don't even need to be passing, and you will have your qualifications. And then for the next 20, 30 years, you've got unsuspecting people going to you. And probably, because as we're speaking now and as we're learning now as well, so many of these therapists are actually plants, right?
I was thinking
so they actually go and they would reprogram you back to where they want you to be. That's what we're discovering on this channel more and more as well. Wow.
And what would have happened if I hadn't spoken out? Sorry, Gabbi, what would have happened if I'd spoken out, and then I would have lost my degree. I would have lost my credentials.
Yeah. And it shows to me, obviously it's the cult control of these institutions, but we know psychologists and, mental health, there's so many orgs in Australia that are totally not what they appear and are really there to shut down survivors as they come forward. So, the fact that they were pushing you into that particular line, speaks volumes about how organised this is, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. It is really scary. So, and that's not to denigrate other people who've got through and got their degree from Flinders or any other university in South Australia. It's just, this is just a really good example of when you come from a certain family, you get mentored through. So I hope that helps people who watched other people in their class perhaps get better grades when they clearly didn't earn it. Understand that, maybe look into that person's family line, look up the Illuminati bloodlines, look up 300 bloodlines underneath that, see if any of those names come up with that person. You might have, a lead.
Wow.
Which school did they go to and who's their daddy? That's the basic one.
Who's your daddy? Exactly. But I want to just say, what just going back to a few minutes earlier, what Gabbi was saying, and just in terms of what it must feel like for you now to be recognized and not be so alone and be believed. And I think, you know, I was having a word, we were interview with Amanda Bass. You saw, you know, her from the round table we had. She's South Africa's top SRA psychologist, and has been for like 45 years. And, you know, we were just saying it's so important just to have people say, I believe you, I'm with you. And just the non-judgment that goes along with that, the open-heartedness, the kindness. And I'm just loving that that's happening more and more. This must be so liberating, Rachel, for you and those like you, you know, what's going on.
It's huge, especially when you consider that, you know, there's been a pretty strong, I mean, it's a small group, but there's a group of trolls that have been chasing myself and my siblings and anybody who spoke out against my father for quite some time. And I know for certain that one of those people was dreadfully abused by one of my family members. That was all, when she was very young, that was all squashed down. And she then started working with her abuser's sister at that television studio. So, you know, these people that go after people like myself, there's always a backstory, you know, and so it's really interesting to look into who they are, where they've come from, why are they doing what they're doing, because a lot of them are paid. It's paid. So given, you know, I've had to deal with that for, well, online harassment for at least 9 years, to have the turnaround again now where I get very little of that now. I get very little of it. I think maybe they realise that it's pointless.
Not working.
It's really just pushed me. It's just given me more incentive to keep trying and pushing and put out the evidence. Yeah.
Wow.
Very interesting. Have you, it was just coming to mind then as you were talking about how these people are coerced into, you know, these roles within the cult. Have you ever been persuaded? I know you went back to your mother when you were 16, I believe. Is that right?
Yeah.
So you're kind of away from your father. But has the cult, you know, attempted to draw you back in and coerce you into, you know, the role that they had planned since that time, or you've been able to split very much from them?
There were attempts, yeah. The last one was what actually triggered me to wake up. So my father actually brought, it wasn't necessarily an attempt to rope me back in, but it was an attempt to see what my reaction would be and whether or not I would be welcoming of this particular individual who was as bad as my father, as far as I'm concerned. I saw him do something horrific on a boat with a small child. And my father brought him to my house unannounced. Now, I was particularly triggered because another family member had brought her 2 children over, or 3 children over. One was very small. And supposedly my father had brought this man to my house to meet the baby, which was just triggered me majorly. And it was shortly after that I just screamed at my father over the phone, and then the memories really started to come up. So he did me a favour, because it triggered me so much. Yeah, and that was shortly after I started to get really, really physically ill. So it's really interesting. When I started to have symptoms that couldn't be explained, shaking uncontrollably and not being able to walk, which could have been Kuru or prion disorder symptoms, which I've talked about on here before with Dr. Bolter. It's like I had to go through that, because when I told my father, because he was always checking on me, he was always ringing up, you know, if I didn't answer his calls or get back to him, then a whole series of my family members would be sent out to see what I was doing and ask me why I wasn't contacting him. So there was always that constant control.
May I ask you how old you were then when you started getting these memories back?
I was basically, I always had some memories. So they weren't all hidden, but the really bad ones started to come up when I was about 28, 29, 30, around that time. Yeah. So when I had those really bad physical symptoms, my father I told him about it on the phone, and it wasn't, oh my God, you poor darling, and which I wouldn't have expected, because he was never that kind of father. It was, oh. And then he wanted me to go off and get genetic testing because he must have recognized the Kuru symptoms. So he went off and got me to have this genetic testing, which at the time was supposed to be about the cystic fibrosis that the family carries. Now, that's a really interesting factor people might be interested in. There's a faulty gene called a PRNP gene with cystic fibrosis. And it's a possibility, some of the research I was reading, it's a possibility that might predispose people to prion disorders. So that might have been why my family line was chosen for that particular prion disorder to be tested on. Unbelievable. So yeah, and that's something also he paid for, which he never would pay for anything. He would never offer money for anything. And he really, really wanted those test results to go back to him. He tried to get me to convince the technician that was doing it to send him the results. And they were like, you're an adult. We can't do that. And he was furious when I told him over the phone that I'd got the results and he hadn't. Absolutely fuming. Yeah. So it was, yeah. So it amazes me really how often people try to trigger me or try to get control of me, but that actually just ends up working in my favor. Like him bringing that man to my house, it actually ended up working in my favor because then I was on high alert, and yeah, then I started to remember some pretty horrible stuff, and that was part of the healing journey too. Once the memory started to come up, it's a real process. So you go through I don't know how many other survivors have gone through the same, but the memory would come up and then I would verify certain factors with others. Like, for instance, if there were in the memory, there was a piece of furniture there, I would ask other people who were older than me at that time, if I was very young in the memory, was that furniture there at that time? And with the validations and verifications, I would, start to really trust that what I was experiencing and remembering, and my body would remember it too. When these memories come up, often you'll get a bodily response, shaking and unbelievable anger or crying or just incredible emotions. And you don't get that when you're just making something up. So so part of that journey was those memories would come up and get the validation, and I'd write it down and I'd sit with it for a while. It might take weeks or months, and then I would put in some sort of statement to police. That's how the process started, thinking foolishly that they might actually do something appropriate about it, which didn't happen. But again, when people don't do what they're supposed to do, I then started writing basically what I call form letters to the politicians and people in power that could have done something about it, telling them, what the police weren't doing, basically whistleblowing, and I would send them to a select number of politicians. And I think I did 3 or 4 of those, and went through every department that I could to have everything sort of done appropriately. That process was extremely frustrating, but it was also part of a really important part of the healing journey, because if I hadn't done that, I would have just been stuck with that frustration. No one's going to listen, so I might as well just forget about it and ignore the other memories that are trying desperately to come through and just, I don't know, drink myself to death or whatever other people do in those sorts of situations. But I'm very determined and stubborn. And when I wasn't getting the sort of feedback that I should have been getting, that just spurred me on to go to a different level. And that's just what I kept doing, get different level, higher level, went through all the levels of authority. That didn't work. And that's when I went public. It's interesting. Healing when you're a satanic ritual abuse survivor is different to healing, I think, when you are a sexual abuse survivor or a physical abuse survivor, because the SRA has a spiritual element. So you have to heal physically, emotionally, psychologically, and you have to do the healing on a spiritual level, which is probably my saving grace, really, the spiritual factor. I am not religious in any way, shape or form, but I do have my own spirituality, something that I developed myself. It probably has elements from all the different religions that are around, because, they all have some basic tenets, but I don't subscribe to any particular religion, but that my belief system kept me strong and kept me focused. And that created an enormous amount of healing. So I can say now, really, physically, my body's in a good place. I do a lot of yoga. I do a lot of strengthening exercises. I swim when I can, do walk, I ride bikes. I try to keep as physical as possible. And that helps a lot, because one thing when you've been squashed down and abused is when you're very small and powerless. It's very, very important to have a strong physical body when you're
That
healing.
makes such perfect sense. Sorry, I was actually about to say that just before you said it. So forgive me for interrupting you here, but I think that is so relevant, because I think, as you say, when you are so small and you feel so powerless, so, you know, suppressed and subjected to all these horrendous things going on, it would seem to me that when you feel strong, not just spiritually and mentally, but in your physical body too. So yoga is brilliant for that. Absolutely. You know, where you can do even just your headstand or a chaturanga or an arm balance or a handstand, just something like that, where you feel like the strength of your body and you have control over your body. Because yoga is an absolute mind, you know, the mind is completely calm. So it's about learning to find that off switch and then completely aligning with your spirit and your emotions and your physical body. So just knowing that control you feel, the breath that you're taking, and the control that is your body. Wow. I think that is, for me, what you've just said there, Rachel, as a healer, is hitting the nail 100% on the head. Because, and not just that, I mean, there would obviously be a lot of other things as well, but that, I think, especially physical, would make a lot of sense to me as to why you would need that, and why that is a very healing.
An amazing SRA survivor, Fiona Barnett, who is sort of basically our foremost whistleblower on SRA.
Yeah, I remember her. Yeah, she was
amazing,
a whistleblower from many years ago, right?
Absolutely. Yeah, I think she started coming out in the 80s, Gabby. Is that right? I think it was something like that.
Late 80s,
Yeah. And she really made a splash. I mean, she did an amazing job. And she still is. She's come out again recently. She went quiet for a while, but she said that one of the main factors of healing when you've been through severe abuse is marrying, particularly if it's MK Ultra abuse as well, is marrying again the two sides of the brain, because a lot of the MK Ultra abuse is involved splitting both sides of the brain, the hemispheres of the brain. So to bring them together, any kind of activity like swimming, where you're doing both sides of the body are in harmony, yoga, anything really does help bring it back. And it's weird, typing. Unlike writing, which just requires one side of the body, when you're typing and writing out your experiences, that also is incredibly helpful, very, very cathartic. And I've written reams and reams of information. I know a lady who's written 4,000 pages of her experiences. The writing it's incredibly important, because if you don't write it down, it's constantly swimming around in your brain and re-traumatizing you all the time, because, you know, that's right, that's what that happened, and gee, I'd forgotten that happened. When you write it down, it's there and you can let it go. So it doesn't keep coming up and bothering you and stressing you out and triggering you all the time. It's almost like that the constant memories coming up is like a trigger to write. It needs to be written down. It needs to be logged. Yeah,
absolutely.
Yeah.
Just carry on for a moment. I just want to, there's a noise going on outside.
Okay.
It's amazing what you were saying about that release from your body as well, Rachel, because I know from my own journey and speaking to other survivors, you know, it's very common for us to hold that trauma in our body in various places. It can, you know, manifest as pain, stiffness, just, you know, shallow breathing, the whole lot. And really, you know, our bodies contain, you know, all of the emotions that we've felt in our lives. So it makes sense that by, you know, doing these amazing practices, you know, taking the time to invest in yourself and do yoga, to meditate, to be active, to go bushwalking, get out in the sun, you know, it's just that release of our bodies, letting it all go. And, you know, I think sometimes we forget, you know, what an amazing vehicle our bodies really are. Like, they know how to heal. Sometimes I think we just need to, like, get out of the way a little bit. slow down and just let it happen. I know that's definitely been my thing. Just stop overthinking it and it just works its way out on its own.
Yeah, your body's designed to heal itself for sure. Yeah. I know that definitely. And I think, you know, with so much trauma that so many people have experienced in this horrendous system, it definitely takes time, patience, love, commitment, you know, to yourself to make it happen. But wow, it makes a lot of sense, you know, that what you're saying, just that whole experience of reclaiming your power.
And to just take it one degree further too, we all have, we are an infinite soul having a human experience, and the soul does exist. Obviously, everybody here realizes that. What people don't realize is there are different elements of the aura, which is excess soul that doesn't fit within the body. And there's an outer layer, which I call the etheric shield, which can become permeated with stress, anxiety, triggering of negative emotions, full-on depletion, like living in areas where, say, you've got a smart meter, or you're near a phone tower, or you're constantly surrounded by really bad EMF waves. That permeation, or the sort of like it ends up with little holes in it, and then that shield's not as powerful to hold off psychic attacks, negative entities that might be trying to tap in, or just being around people who are on a lower soul level who might drain you. So people don't seem to realize you need to keep your soul or your etheric shield healthy. So you've got to go to get into nature. It's really important. So being near the ocean in particular, or anywhere where water is in motion, lets off negative ions, and those negative ions repair that shield. And I've got a particular obsession with endemic scrub. So endemic meaning scrub that's not been manipulated. It's not been, you know, had human beings go in there with tractors and, you know, pull it all down and then re-sow the seeds. It's been there for a very long time. In those areas, you've got what's called mycelium, which is a kind of fungal root system. It's amazing. And it exists just under the soil. That mycelium allows all of the plants and trees and all of the flora to communicate with one another. It's the most incredible communication system. So where you've got areas of mycelium endemic scrub, you've got incredible healing energy. So it doesn't matter where those areas are, find them and go in there. Be respectful, obviously, you know, don't trample on everything, but get in there and heal your etheric, because it makes a massive difference. And those that can't get to those endemic scrubs, you know, the ocean, the lake, you know, anywhere where water's moving, even having a shower to a degree will help, because it's that movement and the negative ions coming.
And it's absolutely true, because if you live in the city and, as you say, aren't near a nice, clean, beautiful ocean, and as blessed as what I certainly am to be living with the ocean on my front door, basically, but to have that shower and just to like visualize that water just cleansing, you know, the mind is such a powerful thing, and your imagination is so powerful. You know, as Einstein said, without your imagination, you've got nothing. So just to have that imagination and just visualizing yourself cleansed and, you know, washing away whatever the debris that needs to be washed away. But man, I got to tell you, that ocean swim in the morning, oh my, I'm becoming addicted to that. That's for sure. That ocean swim in the morning. I mean, I had a late night the other day. It was my birthday last week. So we were out and about, and I woke up feeling not so great the one morning. And I was like up at 6:30 and I went, okay, here we go. It was quite chilly. So I went there and I just had a swim in the ocean. And within 10 minutes, it was amazing. So it was, it really is. And nature is such a healer. And we're blessed here with the forest as well, to take a walk in nature, to take a walk in the forest, you know, sit under a tree, sit on the grass, sit on a rock, just anything, just connect. You will be guided to where you need to be. Absolutely. It's beautiful. Rachel, I want to ask you on a more personal level, with your dad, obviously being, I would imagine, your primary abuser. Am I right?
Yes.
Okay. Firstly, I'd like to ask you this. Was your mum involved at all in the abuse?
No, poor woman. She was very easy to hypnotize. And so my father, I've said this before, there was a rapid induction technique where he would click his fingers and say a couple of words to her and she'd be under. And it wasn't just him who could do it. There were other family members who could do it to her too. And there was the man that I mentioned before that my father brought to my house when my family members' children were there, that really fully triggered me. He was also a hypnotist. He actually had I don't know if it's a tattoo or a mole or something on his toe that looked like an eyeball. You know, just creepy people. One of my other main abusers was also an adept hypnotist. She was trained under Fiona Barnett, who I mentioned before, under her main MK Ultra abuser. So at Sydney University. So in Sydney University is known to have created some pretty horribly dodgy people. So my poor mother, she came from a very poor family. Her father had been dreadfully abused, had been under electroshock treatment, probably got a full Tavistock treatment. I don't know enough about it because there was so much shame around it that it wasn't really spoken about enough in the family. I tried to get his records, but he has a widow, so you can't have that released until the widow has passed. No, my mother is a very kind-hearted, good person. There was a time where I did question it, but I really think deep down, I believe, no, she was present for some of it, but she was not conscious.
Yeah.
Wow.
I think he was constantly drugging her as well, because she would go into her room for days at a time with a migraine, and we weren't allowed to go in and see what was going on with her, and that was incredibly traumatizing because I always thought he was killing her. Yeah, just horrible. Yeah, she went through hell.
That is, and it happens so often, and and this I think is why people will, even when you're listening to Jessie's story, when she and her family moved to her proctor's home, and I think she was three and a half at the time, and then suddenly at 6 o'clock every evening or after dinner, her parents and the rest of her siblings and family were fast asleep. So people don't understand the power, and because the more people I speak to around that, this exact thing occurs. So people don't understand the power of, as you said, the hypnotist, the mind control, the drugging that took place by these very powerful, I'm going to call them Masons, because that's really what they are, and obviously into the whole satanic thing. So regarding your dad now, I mean, where are you at with him? Do you have a relationship with him? He's obviously aware that you're talking.
Joyfully.
Wow.
He died in 2017. I actually had an investigation going into him by the Special Crimes Unit in South Australia. Started in, I think it was middle of 2016, and he died in the middle of 2017 during the investigation. And then everything just stopped. Even though there were properties that still needed to be investigated, there were weapons that we knew the locations of, nothing else happened after that.
Do you feel that
was he aware?
Foul play there? Like, do you feel that he might have been taken out?
It was terribly convenient. It was terribly convenient.
Yeah.
And there's an article. So this is not just me speculating. There is an article that went out the night that my father died. The now owner of the property where he had been living and where the Beaumont children are said to be buried in the sinkhole, the owner, who's a sibling of mine, lit all these fires at 1 o'clock in the morning. Now, the local news crew was down there and wrote an article about it. What was he burning? And apparently the smell was not wood or paperwork, which you would expect. It was the smell of burning flesh and hair. So, and I wasn't there. I'm not the one who was saying that.
Yeah.
Just my father kept trophies. I know, because I saw the skulls that he kept. And they were small, so they were children's skulls. So he kept trophies. He did. There's speculation, not from myself because I wasn't around at that time, but it's believed that he dug up his grandparents and kept them. So he's a very, very sick man. There is really no limit to what he was doing.
How did that happen to him? You know, I'm always curious about stuff like this because, as we always say, at some point he was a little kid too. At some point his innocence was taken away from him as well. You know, and I do agree that in these situations, there's a level of selling yourself out to the dark forces. Some people, I think, have good parts in them, you know, that they're not entirely, like if I look at the, like, what shall I call her, Killary, for example, Mrs. C, okay. I think we understand who I'm talking about. I don't even know how much I can say about names and stuff now. But if I look at her energy to me is just charcoal. It's gone, gone, gone. That she's sold out badly. So I'm wondering, and then there'd be other people that I can really look at and know that they are split and they have these altars. But there's something good that is still in there that one can work with. So I'm wondering if you know, for example, with your dad, what was his story? Can you share some of that with us?
His maternal grandfather was a very high up Freemason. So there was that on his mother's side. I always assumed he must have been abused. His father survived two wars, but he was a good man. My paternal grandfather. So I don't think that my paternal grandfather would have abused him at all. He was always a really lovely old man. Certainly never abused anybody else. So something happened to my father. I believe it's because the whole family on his side is really messed up. There's other things in the family that I can't talk about because I'll get sued. But it wasn't just him. It was just a really bad family.
Wow.
He did write some memoirs. I've really got to go back. It's very triggering to read them, but he really insisted on sending me these memoirs of his. And he only gave me the first chapter, I believe. But my father wrote in code. So what he wrote in those memoirs, I don't think it's got anything really to do much with his childhood. I think he's written in code some of the stuff that he did as an adult, because there's some really interesting stuff in there that doesn't really make much sense unless you looked at it from a different point of view and thought, well, maybe he's talking about that murder there and maybe he's talking about that one there. So I've got to go through it again. There's a lot of disincentive not to because it triggers me so much.
Absolutely.
You
mentioned the Beaumont kids. Can you speak about that?
Yeah, so I was born in 1973, so I wasn't there when this occurred, but in 1966, 3 children from the same family, a 9-year-old called Jane, a 7-year-old called Anna, and a 4-year-old called Grant Beaumont, disappeared from Glenelg Beach. And it's probably the most famous missing child case in our country, because prior to that, there wasn't really much about that sort of thing happening. Kids had a lot of freedom. And then on Australia Day, these poor 3 children went missing. Now, my father admitted in 2015 that his good friend Anthony Munro, and this is an allegation my father's made publicly, brought the 3 dead Beaumont children in the boot of a car to our Edwardstown property. Now, there's a diary also that puts my father, Anthony Munro, several other persons of interest on the beach, including my brother Andrew, who was only a child at that time, was not a person of interest, but he was there. So he knows that they were going to the beach and fossicking and doing things that people do on beaches, Glenelg Beach, in the weeks and days prior to the children going missing. So there is a plethora of evidence to indicate that my father and Anthony Munro were involved with that disappearance, including witness, one of my siblings who doesn't want to be named, witnessed the dead children in the boot of the car, along with our other sister, who's now dead. She died in 2009. We had gently tried, myself and 2 corroborating siblings gently tried to suggest that she'd come clean about what she had experienced. I only spoke to her a couple of times about it, and she was reluctant. And I remember saying to her, Claire, we'll keep you safe, we'll keep you safe. Well, she made an appointment to see the Major Crime Department. She was dead the next day. So we weren't able to keep her safe. And that was
So
one of those crazy.
Are we saying that she was killed?
Well, she supposedly snapped her own neck with a sash cord. I mean, what are the chances? And there were some other extenuating circumstances around her death, which definitely point to foul play, not least of all the fact that her own mother, so 3 of my siblings were half siblings, and their mother died in very strange circumstances. Again, there should still be an inquest into her death, because it was clearly, she died in a facility, and supposedly had her ring and watch stolen, but my father made a big to-do about it, and then he produced those 2 items at a later date. So it's pretty likely he did it himself. The family history is just horrific. It really is. So yeah, so the Beaumont children, that's a case that's, so many people have sold books and they've sold articles in newspapers for the 56 years, I think it is, since they went missing. Ever since the petition that was set up on the behalf of my brother, who was a witness on that day as well, and my sibling that doesn't want to be named, ever since that petition got to a really high level, it's about 33,000 people have signed it now. They really want this sinkhole to be exhumed. Ever since that got to a high level, now there's no mention of the Beaumont children on Australia Day in the major papers, like they used to do it every year. Now they've stopped, they've gone quiet. They did do a dig at the Castilloy factory in North Plympton. I think that was 2019. They found animal bones. That cost $250,000. It would cost roughly $40,000 to do an exhumation at Stansbury for the sinkhole. They don't want to. The South Australian Police don't want to investigate it. They don't want to solve the case, and they certainly don't want to point the finger at my father, which is just bizarre. And I saw him do terrible things to multiple children myself, including murder. But my testimony just means nothing to them, even though it was enough to get him investigated in 2016. They won't take it up again.
Do you think that the investigation they did was more like a
cover up,
bit of a farce?
Oh, it's hard to tell. That there was a politician involved who helped to get the investigation going, and I have great respect for her. So I think that it was genuinely put into place. And I met with that detective who was doing the investigation on multiple occasions, and my sense was that he was genuine. And he had the decency to actually come out and speak to me about how they can't convict a corpse after my father died, so they couldn't go any further with the investigation. And he asked me a few other questions about other perpetrators that were involved. Something about his demeanour told me that he was genuine.
Yeah.
But I think that it was probably squashed from above, and he couldn't go any further with it. So there are some good cops out there.
I was about to say, it's good to know that there are, even if they are sort of just peppered in between, those are the ones that will ultimately the torch carriers for these situations. And I do believe, the time will come. And just by mentioning the kids, the Beaumont kids, for example, and, countless kids, as they're known as the system, as the expendables, I don't think any one of those souls will ever be forgotten. Even if we don't know their names right now, there just seem to be so many forgotten kids in the system, but I think each and every one of them have not died in vain. I do believe that the time will come when all of them will be honored for their lives,
Well, we're coming close to that time, I believe, Chantel. Definitely.
Yeah.
I think so. You
can really feel that energy. Yeah, it's like everyone's voice is rising now. And I know I hear from supporters who haven't experienced this abuse themselves in any way, and they are really rising up for the children that are no longer with us as well. So it's beautiful that they, are finding a voice in our society finally.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. all these protests where you're seeing people, just holding up signs saying save the children, I never thought that would ever happen. And it's happening en masse now. So people are fully aware. Lots and lots of people realise now that there's a whole child trafficking network that has been supporting politicians and horrific acts throughout the world for a very long time. It's no secret anymore.
Yeah, and the media must be hard to call it an anti-vax rally anymore when there's all these signs out there. So, credit to all the amazing people getting their signs out there, because you can't deny what they say. Doesn't matter what the media voices over, it's right there in front of them. So that's awesome.
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah. No matter how often they try and pan across the crowd as quickly as possible so you can't read them, you can still read them.
And what a beautiful moment for you. Like you said, your experiences with the Australian media, being used to produce like child rape material. And like we have plenty of survivors in Australia that have the same stories. Like what a beautiful circle that they're now having this on their channel and it's going out to the public. Yeah.
Yeah, I just thought it was uncanny, the 3 friends that I had there with their placards all getting on that 1 3.5 minute broadcast.
Yeah. Yes. What's the
guys?
So good.
But that again, I want to just like highlight how amazing that must be for you to see that. And Fiona Barnett, I mean, I don't know, I haven't heard about her for a long time now. I've heard that she's kind of gone under. Has she? Is she still talking?
She started
Fiona?
speaking out again. Last year she started blogging again. And she started speaking out again. So she's doing interviews now, but she's keeping it very, there's one interviewer that she really trusts, so she's sticking with him, but I believe there'll be more and more of those interviews coming out very soon.
Yeah. And
I would love to chat with her here.
Yeah, her blog is amazingly censored. I mean, not surprisingly, like you can't even get the links on most social media.
No.
So I try and put that up on Telegram, but yeah, it's amazing.
Can't even put her name on social media.
Yeah.
I've just tried putting her name in a comment on a post, and it just comes up with the little exclamation mark on Facebook. It's amazing. Yeah.
Scared much.
Listen, did you guys actually hear what happened with Jeanette Archer a couple of weeks ago?
Yes, sadly.
Yeah, it's awful, isn't it?
I just feel completely hopeless and helpless to help her because, she's in the UK. I don't have many connections there. She's a friend of mine. That's horrible. It's just horrible. And
we just got to pray for her and just, send the light and, all of that because, I think she's been through a bit of a tough time, probably still going through a bit of a tough time. After what happened.
She's incredibly powerful and resilient. I think she'll bounce back.
Wow. Yeah, definitely. I think maybe just a bit of a breather right now. Yeah. I think what she must have gone through, and I don't know for sure what she went through. I just know that they were stopped and arrested and all their stuff because they were on their way to a rally, another one of her talks. And stopped and taken somewhere. I don't want to go into too many graphic details here again. But I think that must be very, very, very hectic. And especially when you've got children, because we know now how these guys work. They don't really give a rat's backside for your family. In fact, if they can target your family, that's exactly what they're going to do. And as a mother, that's the last thing you want is for your children to get hurt. It doesn't matter how old they are, it's for your kids to get hurt. So let's just keep her in our thoughts and our prayers as well. And just look forward to when she steps out again. Yeah, I'm sure it'll happen.
She's an absolute warrior, so I'm sure she'll take this time to heal and make sure everyone in her family's good and then be back when she's ready. So
I look what she's achieved already, for heaven's sake. Who does that? I mean, she's just incredible to take on those two particular families.
I could not believe it when I was the first time. And I think someone sent me that link It was a day after it happened, I do believe. And it was like, wow, I could not believe it. I listened to it 2 or 3 times because I remember maybe a year or so ago, I listened to Ali Carter. I don't know if you guys know Ali Carter. She's that American girl, African-American girl, who was also trafficked with the high level, with these high level guys in the tunnels and what have you. I mean, that poor girl and her mum have been harassed, chased, tortured, abused. I mean, what they've gone through as well. And I know that Ali Carter was mentioning stuff like that prior to that. And then when I heard Jeanette Archer speak about it, it was like, oh my goodness, I love it. I absolutely love it that this stuff is coming out. It still amazes me though, how many people are bowing and scraping to the royals. It's astounding to me that even despite all of this going on and so much information out there, so public, that there are people going, hail the Queen Mother, whatever you say to her, you know, or the Queen herself, whatever. But yeah, anyway.
It's weird. It's a doting kind of energy too. If you look at the comments under some of the broadcasts, it's almost like they consider them to be their pets. It's a really weird energy. It's an ownership.
Yes,
it's programming, isn't
bizarre.
it? Yeah,
very weird.
I guess the media has just, you know, Mockingbird has made them out to be so different to the reality of who they are. It's actually, like, I can see it in people. You know, I've even had heated discussions with survivors about, you know, the royals, and I'm like, can you not at least look at Prince Andrew's efforts, you know, even if you don't want to go the full way? And it's just a block, like a complete veil. From survivors. I'm just like, wow. Yeah,
and we all know he's just a poor guy, and he of course just likes underage girls, right? And honestly, I certainly don't even for 1 second, that's not okay. If you've been a teenage girl and you've been molested and abused and conned into thinking you're gonna, you know, these teenage girls that go there and they're wanting some fame and fortune and wanting to meet a famous guy and whatever, you know, hey, we're all teenagers once. That does not mean it's okay to do with them what they've been done to. But it's just so much more than just having sex with underage girls. That's for sure.
Absolutely. And like, you know, one of the comments, you know, we don't get too many of them anymore, but, you know, I have women, you know, calling out people like Virginia and survivor shaming them. And, you know, she was trafficked by Mossad intelligence agents. They were professionals. They have literally blackmailed, you know, some of the most powerful people in the world that we can still see. You know, how does a 17-year-old girl stand a bloody chance with that? And, you know, when I hear that from women, I'm just like, oh, we really need to, you know, change our attitude, listen to survivors and just, drop the programming.
It frustrates me so to hear from other women, especially, you know, that they are defending these creeps, you know, that other women. But again, it's still the mind control as well.
They're repeating that, you know, what's being said in the media, and the media uses, you know, all these terms like underage woman and, you know, sex rather than rape. And it's just like, I think we just have to get really clear on the terminology. And it is shocking to say it's child rape, but, you know, I'm starting to use child rapist rather than even pedophile, because pedophiles imply they love children. They don't. They rape children. So I think
pedophiles like it's
direct.
Just an attraction, but it's not just an attraction. These people are acting out, and it's horrifically invasive and abusive.
It's a crime. But rather than you know, the media is trying to sell it to us as a preference at the moment. You know, I think we have to label it and be very clear with the language that it is a horrific crime against our children. And when we get really honest and direct and, you know, clear on this language around it, I think we break down a lot of, you know, the people around us, their programming as well. And they're like, wow, it is child rape.
Absolutely. I must say, Gabbi, I love the posts you put out there. You're very, very articulate with a pen.
I'm so surprised I'm still up every day. I'm like,
yeah, exactly. And the way you explain that is really good. You don't mince your words, but you do it in a very articulate, non-aggressive way, but it's very clear as to what you're saying. So I love the way you're putting it out there, really, and creating so much awareness around what's going on. Wow.
Yeah, you're doing an amazing job, darling.
Thank you. It's beautiful to see, you know, like over the last few years, just how many are joining and being a voice for our children. And I know it gives me so much hope. And, you know, I look at you, Rachel, and I just think, wow, you know, your heart must just be like breaking open to see this after so many decades of like pushing so hard. With
a lot of happy tears.
Yeah. The best ones.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
And that's really healing, isn't it? It's healing for you as an individual, but we're healing our society as well. You know, it's such a collective healing at the moment too.
And it's just so beneficial for so many of the little people at the moment, the kids, you know, who are in there. And I honestly, and I think it was on a week or two ago, Gabbi, when we were talking, I really felt the kids rejoicing, because they know, spiritually they know, even if they are underneath there at the moment and having horrible experiences, something in them knows that we've got their backs and we're doing whatever we can to make a change in this world in which is so dark and so devastating right now. But wow, so absolutely. Kudos to you, beautiful heart warrior women. And then Morne, you too. Morne, since they're very quiet today, not saying much, but I mean, honestly, there's amazing.
This is how it sounds at me right now. Dogs barking, people bullying. So every time I want to say something, I was like, okay, there goes the dogs again. I'll just leave it. But the good thing about me, Chantel, we've been working along for so long. I just think something and then she says it. So she really gives stuff. Sometimes she says exactly what I want to say or asks exactly what I want to say. So that's good. But yeah, Rachel, I love your story and I love how your techniques you shared with the healing as well, journaling and the body. And I just look at you and you're such a beautiful, strong, gentle person. I just can't imagine you've been through what you've gone through and rised up to where you are right now. And I can just imagine seeing that on TV. I'll be like, yay! I can just imagine. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you.
Beautiful, yeah, it's so cool. And we were speaking earlier on that I'd love to have you guys back again on the Solutions channel. For the viewers that don't know, we've just started less than a week ago. In fact, it was launched on my birthday last week, Thursday, Solutions, which is, and I've said it before and I'll probably say it a few hundred times again, Aquarius Rising Africa is where we really bring up and have a platform for this yucky stuff that is so necessary to shine a light on it. And then Solutions would be the bridge that takes us to the solutions. So the healing, the way forward from here. You know, I always say we're not interested in using AK-47s and guns and knives and things like that. That's not the solution at all. But it starts here with ourselves. I love, Rachel, you know, what you're saying about the yoga, the breathing, the nature. So we're going to look at ways forward of healing now. So many survivors coming out there, and using their voices would be number one, absolutely number one, expressing that aspect and speaking their truth. That is number one for sure. And now after that, what do we do? What do we do to heal ourselves? And how do we make the difference? And how do we create the changes in the world? So I'm very excited for that. So definitely going to have you, both of you, on there as well, speaking about that very soon. not that we're going anywhere with Aquarius Rising Australia. That's staying put, make no mistake. But also it'd be so nice to see more and more of our viewers transitioning to that side where it's now the healing people. And even if you haven't been abused, even if you're one of these lucky people like myself, I say thank God for that every day, that hasn't had these awful things go down. But there's other healing, you know, and you could potentially be one of those that holds the space, is a healer, can just be an ear for someone to listen to, just to believe someone, just to hold their hand while they're telling you a story is so, so healing. So definitely looking forward to that. Yeah, I'll let you know. So Morne will post the link in the channel again. So maybe give us a like and a subscribe there as well on the other channel. And as we're growing that with more and more healers coming out. So I want to say thank you so much. But before we end off, is there any closing thoughts from both Gabbi and you, Rachel, before we bid you farewell?
Yeah, I love your idea with the healing channel. And I know we've been chatting about this for some time. And
yeah,
it makes sense to me. Like, it just feels so good energetically, because I feel like at present we're very much exposing and dismantling this old broken paradigm. And you have to be very direct. All this information needs to go out. It's, you know, dark. We have to learn from and recognize the evil that we have all been a part of, because we've been ignorant to it. We haven't been fighting it. We haven't been speaking against it for our whole lives. You know, in a lot of ways, we have been very much embedded in this satanic world that we've been born into. But at the same time, we don't want to spend all of our time in that place. And, you know, we're now in the position that we've exposed it enough, and there's enough people awake that those people awake can now start building and creating the new earth, you know, the new paradigm. So we want to spend time each day there, healing yourself, you know, centering yourself, investing in yourself, and healing each other. Like, there's so much healing to be done for everybody. We've all been traumatized by this horrific, you know, matrix that we've been born into. So, you know, I don't think it matters, like you're saying, Chantel, whether you've experienced any sort of physical abuse. We've all been traumatized. And I feel that everyone is dropping those loads at the moment. We're letting go of so much old baggage. And we all need a hand. You know, you can be the best healer and you still need a hand sometimes to let things go. It's hard when it's personal sometimes. So I'm really excited to be a part of this solution as well. So thank you.
What a fabulous idea. Well done. A lot of survivors contact me and say, I couldn't watch all of your interview because it was too triggering. So there has to be a forum for them to get the healing. I think that's so important. So thank you all three of you for what you do for people like myself, because it's all very well to want to speak about it and get out there, but you have to be hosted. And you're all just incredible warriors, basically, doing what you're doing for people like me. I just don't know how to thank you all, really. And I'm sure that everybody else that gets on your channel feels the same way. Because it's not necessarily the safest place to be, but it's incredibly beautiful. Thank you.
Absolutely.
So welcome.
Yeah, so welcome. So we will definitely keep you guys informed of whatever future stuff we're doing there, but keep connected with us, and we will definitely, there's lots going on already. We've already had our 2 first interviews. The one was just with the group, our team, Morne, Doro, Thea, and Vivi, and the topic was your energy is your currency. So how do we understand, you know, how to work with our own energy and what we're actually putting out there, and how can we attract just amazing stuff into our lives, just people, situations. And then, of course, we had an interview with Catherine Edwards from the UK, and she's this amazing animal lover and just animals. And animals are so important on our journey, and how we treat them and how we love them. And, they're not our objects. We don't own them. They're not ours to own. They're little souls in their own right, and just how we treat them. They are such amazing healers. I mean, my cat, I want to tell you, one of them, the night that I got attacked, that little thing was the reason why that dude didn't get right what he needed to get right. She growled and hissed, and that's how I woke up, because when I went to bed that night, I was so tired. I was dead to the world. And she growled and hissed, and she went for him. And that's how he turned around. And that's what I'm saying. So I don't have dogs, but I have cats. So she's a little tiger, like her mama.
Amazing.
So what I'm saying is they are so beautiful and so important, and we're doing a whole channel on animals as well, treating them well, their diets and stuff like that, and animal communication, because I do believe as we move into 5D consciousness, when we open our hearts and open our minds, we talk to them and they talk back. And that's how we actually create a world where we don't have to kill and shoot and cull and overpopulate. It's just horrible. What we're doing right now is just horrible. It's horrible for everyone, human and animal, totally. So yeah, there's a whole lot of beautiful stuff tomorrow. In fact, on Wednesday, we have Bryce from Esoteric Atlanta. We're doing a whole Wellness Wednesday, talking yoga, talking yogic practices, talking cleansing practices, that because the yoga, Ayurveda is the sister science of yoga. And there's so much more to yoga than just having your practice every morning, although that's beautiful for your body and aligning with source, your creator. But the limbs of yoga and just, the general cleansing practices, prevention is better than cure. So yoga is all about prevention. And I just love what you were saying, Rachel, earlier on about, doing the yoga, the strength, the control in the mind and the body alignment. It's just amazing. So the world really is a very beautiful place. And I'm just so grateful to be surrounded by so many amazing people who feel the same way, and everyone is just contributing and making it a better place. So yeah, thank you so much to everybody. Can't wait for what 2022 holds. It's already like halfway through the second month. Can you believe? And we're just going, yeah. So it's beautiful. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Great. Okay, everybody. Thank you so much for watching another episode with these amazing Australian women, and just loving Australia all the way. And I would actually love to hear from some New Zealanders as well, who are your neighbors. I hear there's some dodginess going on there at the moment, or actually some lovely things. Saw all the truckers there, and they were bringing their hay and everything. And apparently the Prime Minister was putting on sprinklers and stuff and trying to get them to move, and they were like just staying put, and everyone was bringing their bales of hay. I've seen some beautiful pictures. Would love to hear something from New Zealanders as well, really. So if there's anyone out there from New Zealand who would like to share their story, we would definitely be welcoming you on here as well, for sure. Cool. Okay, everyone, take it easy. If you haven't already, please give us a like, a share, and subscribe. Find us on Facebook, BitChute, Twitter, Telegram, and Odyssey. Take good care. Love you madly. And we shall see you next week. God bless you all.